Have you ever had a moment where you looked at your finances and thought, how did I get here? Maybe you're in your 40s, feeling behind on your money goals, and wondering if it's too late to turn things around. I've been there, and I know exactly how that feels. Hi, I'm James, and welcome back to Midlife Wealth Journey, where we help midlifers like you build a secure financial future. Today, I'm opening up about something personal, my own midlife money story. I'm going to take you back to where it all began, share the struggles I faced, the wake-up call that changed everything, and the steps I took to start building wealth in my fats. My story isn't perfect, but it's real, and I hope it inspires you to take control of your own financial journey. Let's dive in. The starting point. Where I was in my early 40s. Let's rewind a few years to when I was 41. At that time, I was working as a project manager, earning a decent salary, about $75,000 a year. On the surface, things looked okay. I had a nice apartment, a reliable car, and I could afford small luxuries like weekend getaways or dinners out with friends. But underneath that, my financial life was a mess. I had $18,000 in credit card debt, mostly from years of overspending on things I thought I needed to keep up with my peers. I had no emergency fund, so every unexpected expense, like a $500 car repair, went straight on a credit card. And retirement savings? I had almost nothing. Maybe $2,000 in an old retirement account from a previous job, but I hadn't added to it in years. I wasn't completely reckless with money, but I wasn't intentional either. I'd tell myself, I'll save more next month, or I'll start investing when I make more money. But month after month, I kept putting it off. I was living paycheck to paycheck, even though I earned a good income. Looking back, I realized I was stuck in a cycle of avoidance. I didn't want to face the reality of my finances because it felt too overwhelming. I'd rather spend $200 on a new gadget than put that money toward my debt or savings. It was easier to ignore the problem than to deal with it. On top of that, I had a lot of responsibilities. I was helping my aging parents with some of their expenses, like medical bills, which added up to about $300 a month. I also had a teenage son, and I wanted to give him the best. School activities, new clothes, a laptop for school. I told myself I was being a good parent, but I was sacrificing my financial future to do it. I felt trapped, like I'd never get ahead, and I started to believe that building wealth just wasn't possible for someone like me. Maybe you can relate, feeling like you're doing your best, but your bank account doesn't reflect it. The wake-up call that changed everything. Everything changed one day when I got a wake-up call I'll never forget. I was 42, sitting at my desk at work when I got a call from my bank. They were calling to tell me my credit card payment was overdue again. I'd missed the payment by a few days, and now I had a late fee of $35 on top of the interest I was already paying. That $35 might not sound like a lot, but for some reason, it hit me hard. I realized I was throwing away money on late fees and interest because I wasn't paying attention. That same day, I logged into my bank account and saw my credit card balance. $18,500. It had crept up even more because of the interest and fees. I felt a wave of panic. How had I let things get this bad? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my future. I was 42 and I had almost nothing saved for retirement. I did some quick math in my head. If I kept going at this rate, I'd be working well into my 70s, assuming my health even held up that long. I thought about my son, who was 15 at the time. I wanted to help him with college, maybe leave him something to start his own life, but I wasn't in a position to do that. I also thought about my parents. They were in their late 60s, living on a fixed income, and I saw how much they struggled. I didn't want that to be me in 20 years. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep living this way. I didn't know exactly how to fix my finances, but I knew I had to start somewhere. That $35 late fee was the push I needed to finally take control. It wasn't just about the money. It was about taking responsibility for my future and the people I cared about. I didn't want to be 60, looking back and wishing I'd done things differently. That moment was the beginning of my midlife money journey, and I'm so glad it happened. Step 1. Facing the truth about my finances. The first thing I did was face the truth about my finances. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the problem, so I set aside a weekend to get a clear picture of where I stood. I grabbed a notebook, a cup of coffee, and sat down at my kitchen table. I started by writing down my monthly income. $75,000 a year worked out to about $4,800 a month after taxes. Then I listed all my expenses. Rent was $1,300. Groceries and utilities were $600. Car payment and gas were $400, and I was spending about $300 a month helping my parents. I also had subscriptions, streaming services, gym membership, things like that added up to $100 a month. Then there were the extras, dining out, entertainment, impulse buys, that came to about $500 a month. Next, I wrote down my debts. I had that $18,500 credit card balance across 3 cards, with interest rates ranging from 16% to 22%. I also had a small car loan of $5,000 at 5% interest. Finally, I looked at my savings. $2,000 in a retirement account and $300 in my checking account. No emergency fund, no investments, nothing else. Seeing it all written down was tough. I realized I was spending almost as much as I earned, and most of my extra money was going toward interest on my credit cards, not toward my future. But facing the truth was the first step to making a change. I also took a hard look at my spending habits. I noticed I was spending a lot on things that didn't bring me lasting happiness, like $150 a month on takeout coffee and lunches at work. I decided to start small by cutting back on those expenses. I bought a coffee maker and started bringing my lunch to work, which saved me $100 a month right away. It wasn't a huge change, but it gave me a sense of control, and that $100 became the first piece of my financial turnaround. Step 2. Tackling my debt with a plan. The next step was tackling my debt. I knew that $18,500 credit card balance was holding me back. It was like a weight on my shoulders, and the interest was eating away at my income. I did some research and learned about 2 popular debt payoff strategies. The snowball method, where you pay off the smallest debt first, and the avalanche method, where you focus on the debt with the highest interest rate. I decided to go with the avalanche method because I wanted to save as much on interest as possible. I listed my 3 credit cards, one with a $5,000 balance at 16% interest, another with $6,500 at 18%, and the last with $7,000 at 22%. That 22% card was costing me the most, so I focused on it first. I kept making minimum payments on the other 2 cards, about $150 a month total, and put every extra dollar toward the $7,000 card. After cutting back on coffee and lunches, I had $100 a month. I also canceled a few subscriptions I didn't need, which freed up another $50. Then I picked up a small side hustle, doing some freelance project management work on weekends, which brought in an extra $200 a month. That gave me $350 a month to throw at my highest interest card. It wasn't easy. There were months when I had unexpected expenses, like when my son needed new shoes for school, or when my car needed new tires. But I stayed committed. I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. I wanted to be free of debt so I could start building wealth. It took me 18 months, but I paid off that $7,000 card. The day I made that final payment, I felt a huge sense of relief. I rolled that $350 a month into the next card, the $6,500 balance at 18%. I paid that off in another 15 months. By the time I turned 44, I'd paid off all $18,500 of my credit card debt. I still had the $5,000 car loan, but that was at a much lower interest rate, so I wasn't as worried about it. Getting rid of that high-interest debt was a game changer. It freed up money and gave me the confidence to keep going. Step 3. Building a safety net. With my credit card debt gone, I turned my attention to building a safety net. I'd learned the hard way how stressful it was to have no savings when unexpected expenses came up. I decided to start with a small emergency fund, $1,000, to cover things like car repairs or medical bills. I took the $350 a month I'd been putting toward debt and redirected it to a savings account. It took me just 3 months to reach $1,000, and having that cushion felt incredible. But I didn't stop there. I wanted a bigger safety net, something that could cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. My monthly expenses were about $3,000, so I set a goal of $9,000 to start. I kept saving $350 a month, and I also started putting any extra money, like a small work bonus or a tax refund, into my emergency fund. It took me 2 years, but I eventually reached $9,000. Now if something unexpected happens, I don't have to panic or rely on credit cards. That safety net gives me peace of mind and lets me focus on building wealth instead of just surviving. Step 4. Starting to invest for my future. The next step was starting to invest. Now that I had my debt under control and an emergency fund in place, I felt ready to take the next step in my wealth journey. I'll be honest, investing scared me at first. I'd heard stories about people losing money in the stock market, and I didn't know where to start. But I did some research and learned that I didn't have to take big risks to see growth. I started by contributing to my employer's retirement plan. They offered a 401k with a small matching contribution. If I put in 3% of my salary, they'd match it with another 3%. That was like free money, so I signed up right away. I started contributing $200 a month, and my employer added another $200. I also opened an individual retirement account and started putting $100 a month into a low-cost index fund that tracked the stock market. I didn't try to pick individual stocks or time the market. I just invested consistently, month after month. Over the next few years, my investments started to grow. I had some ups and downs with the market, but I kept reminding myself that investing is a long-term game. By the time I turned 46, my 401k and retirement account together were worth $20,000. Not a huge amount, but a solid start. I'm still investing every month, and I've increased my contributions as my income has grown. Knowing that my money is working for me even while I sleep is one of the best feelings in the world. Lessons I learned along the way. Looking back on my journey, I've learned a few key lessons that I want to share with you. First, it's never too late to start. I was 42 when I had my wake-up call, and I felt so far behind. But taking that first step, facing my finances and making a plan, changed everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to start where you are. Second, small changes add up. Cutting back on $100 a month in coffee and lunches didn't feel like a big deal at the time, but that $100 became the foundation of my debt payoff plan. Little wins, like canceling subscriptions, picking up a side hustle, or automating your savings, can lead to big results over time. Don't underestimate the power of consistency. Third, mindset matters. For years, I told myself I wasn't good with money, that wealth was for other people, not me. But once I started taking action, my confidence grew. I realized that building wealth isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up for yourself, even when it's hard. Changing my mindset from "I can't do this" to "I'm learning as I go" made all the difference. Finally, get support if you need it. I didn't do this alone. I watched videos, read blogs, and talked to friends who were good with money. I even met with a financial advisor once to make sure I was on the right track. Surrounding yourself with resources and people who inspire you can keep you motivated, especially on the tough days. Where I am now and what's next. So, where am I now? I'm 46, and I'm in a much better place financially than I was at 41. My credit card debt is gone, I have a $9,000 emergency fund, and my investments are growing. My retirement accounts are now worth $20,000 and climbing. I've also started saving for my son's college fund, $100 a month in a separate account, so I can help him when the time comes. I'm not a millionaire, and I still have a long way to go, but I feel in control of my money for the first time in my life. What's next for me? I'm working on increasing my investments. I'd like to get to $50,000 in my retirement accounts in the next 3 years. I'm also exploring other ways to grow my income, like taking on more freelance work or starting a small side business. And I'm committed to sharing my journey with you here on Midlife Wealth Journey, because I know how much it helps to hear real stories from real people. If I can turn things around in my 40s, I know you can too. That's my midlife money story, where it all began, the struggles I faced, and the steps I took to start building wealth in my 40s. I hope my story inspires you to take a hard look at your own finances and take that first step, whether it's facing your numbers, paying off debt, or starting to save. I want to hear from you. What's one thing you're going to do after watching this video to start your own wealth journey? Maybe you'll create a budget, set up an emergency fund, or finally start investing. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story and cheer you on. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. We're going to be talking about budgeting basics for a midlife wealth plan, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.